I remember the day I got sentenced. I was frustrated because I realized I was going to prison, and I had convinced myself that I wasn't. And then I'm in a cell, and it's like solitary. There's a holding cell. I'm like, yo, man, what am I gonna be when I leave here? You know what I mean? Like, and I got to do this time now. You know what I mean? But like, when I leave, she taught me that you could forgive yourself and that you could grow into being the person that you are. And she's always been my strongest supporter, but she's also been a person that has reflected to me what it means to be strong. Tomorrow will be better. You get to sow seeds in the world, and you always have a choice about whether what you say adds to someone's suffering or eases their suffering. There's moments that you just don't have the answer, and to find a way to still talk. The piece of advice I have now is 2 ways to stay young.
Hi, this is Ariane, and welcome to another episode of The Spirit Collective, where I talk to remarkable people about a side of their lives they rarely talk about, their spiritual path. It's time for a different conversation. I have never interviewed someone who went to jail for nearly 9 years, most of it spent in solitary confinement. Dwayne Betts was 16 years old, a gifted honors student, class treasurer, and by every external measure, a kid that was definitely going somewhere, when he and a friend made a series of bad decisions one night in a Virginia Mall parking lot. He held a gun to a man's head, stole his car, and was tried as an adult. But the story begins much later, when somebody whose name he never learnt slid a paperback book called The Black Poets under his cell door. In the buildings above him, other men had quietly built, with torn sheets tied into a rope strung between cells 40 feet apart and books traveling in pillowcases along it, a secret library, a network, some form of alternate reality. What he read in that book convinced him that there were other ways to live. He walked out of prison on March 4th, 2005, worked at a bookstore, got into college, then Yale Law School, then a MacArthur Fellowship. He's now, more importantly, a poet, a father of 2 sons, a devoted husband, a lawyer, and the founder and CEO of Freedom Reads, which has now placed more than 500 libraries inside of American prisons. We put millions of people in prison, Dwayne says. I want to put millions of books in prison. His new film, March 4th, premieres at the Tribeca Film Festival this year. The title is the date that he walked out. Dwayne and I met at TED in Vancouver this year. I've been thinking about you ever since, Dwayne, about what you believe, about what you would talk about your inner journey, your soul's journey, what you read now, and also what you would tell your sons. Today, I want to ask this man about his spiritual life, maybe about how it has been to be at the very bottom and to walk back up. Certainly, you know things that maybe we don't. But Dwayne, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to the Spirit Collective.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's going to be fun.
It is going
Thank
to
you
be
for having
fun.
me.
We're going to have a very different conversation. A lot of prison stories that I've heard, they kind of are what I call clean spiritual narratives. People walk in, they say they found God inside, they were saved. I'm not going to do that here with you at all. But I do want to take you back to your childhood and just know, what was your earliest relationship to faith, to God, to a higher power, to something your family believed in? Was there anything at the beginning, even before, what happened when you were 16?
Yeah, but these aren't fair because these become, in some ways, like the memories that I use to help me understand things, and not necessarily like really um windows into the faith practices that I had as a kid, because some of those just have to do with paying attention to the world, like finding fully clovers. My aunt, the one that really hit me to that, and I just found 2 yesterday. And there's a certain amount of attention to detail that is required of it. But in terms of an actual church, we didn't really go much. But I do remember once going, and I was in line to get baptized. I was young, maybe 4 years old, maybe 5. And when I got to the front, they asked me like what I wanted to do, and I was in line to get baptized, but I didn't know how to answer the question. And the pastor was like, "Come back when you know what you want." And it was interesting because in my head, that is like a certain kind of relationship with a religion that developed, and it was a kind of uncomfortability with it. Uncomfortability with being able to name a blessing, or even to be able to name a desire to know more than what you know, as something that you could recognize that you've been overwhelmed by figuring out on your own. But I think I've grown since then, and I have a complicated relationship with it, which is to say, I'm not going to be in church every Sunday, but I live in a sense of awe because of what I witnessed and experienced.
So take me back to when you were 16. What was your relationship to life, a higher power? Were you just a regular 16-year-old teenager? Did you think, like, was there a sort of punishing, judging God? Was there,
I had a couple times when I was supposed to get baptized, and I didn't. And then when I didn't, people would say that's the devil talking to you. You know, I had moments like that at 16. But generally, I can't remember. You know, I would just say that I had these moments that my relationship was more about um the proposition of faith, particularly in the context of the lives of some of the people I know that they were living. You know, how do you think about faith in the context of poverty? How do you think about it in the context of the violence of prison? Even though I wasn't in prison at the time, I was still reading books about it. And so I think I was more so engaged with it in that way. And it's been as I gotten older that I've experienced enough moments of wonderment that that's not the same argument I'm making. But I still do think it's a lot of relevance in what can come off as a political argument when you talk about like what faiths you then give your attention to.
I like the faith is wonderment and the faith is awe and the faith is beauty.
Yeah,
Those are
that good.
three beautiful words. Um, I do want to touch on the the prison story. Did you feel like your faith weakened, strengthened, changed during those 9
I,
years?
I mean, yeah, I think that I discovered during that time faith is like it's not as coherently tied to institution as I did at first. Because I think that was really helpful, and that's something that happened in prison. But I think my faith strengthened. I was never the one that's to survive prison. You know, I was 125 so pounds. So yeah, my whole survival was a thing that strengthened my faith.
Can you take me to, if you can take me back there, can you take me back to your inner dialogue? Like, what did you say to yourself? Whether you're speaking to something greater or not, it doesn't even matter. But what was your inner dialogue? Was it positive? Was it horrible?
I
Did you
remember the day
pump
I got
yourself
sentenced.
up?
I remember the day I got sentenced. I was frustrated because I realized I was going to prison, and I had convinced myself that I wasn't. You know, and then I'm in a cell, and it's like solitary. It's like there's a holding cell. And I'm like, yo, man, what am I gonna be when I leave here? You know what I mean? Like I know I got to do this time now. You know what I mean? But like when I leave, and I was like, you can't be an engineer. I mean, you're in prison. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be a writer. Yeah, man, I'm gonna be a writer. I'm gonna be a writer. And that had nothing to do with time. And I was far enough away from the finish line that could have easily been that my question, but it was, and it would drive my thinking for the next number of years.
So it was you having a compelling future. It was quite Viktor
Yeah,
Frankl, right? It's very like, I know what I'm going to be and what I'm going to do when I get out of here.
yeah. I love that you said that. And Primo Levi.
Did you get angry with life? If we want to call it life, we don't need to call it God. Did you have kind of moments of going,
Well, I
what
was
the hell?
I was guilty, and I think one of the things about being guilty for something that lands you in prison is that holding on to that guilt helps you somehow know that you making it right is a part of your responsibility, and that passing around anger ain't as easy to do as it is if you've only been like victimized. And I know hurt exists. We all hurt people, but it's different to know that you put a pistol on somebody. It's hard to be angry at God when I did that.
Did you do anything that was sort of predictable? Like, are there prayer circles in prison? Did you participate in any of those? Is there church in prison? Like, I mean, people have a perception of this. I want to know what the truth is.
Cause like it's all of those. It's all of the. When I was young, I used to go to the Christian service. Um, my homeboy was he was a Christian, and he led the service. And I would go to the Rasta service, and I would go to the Muslim service. So they had these services, and when I was young, I would find mentors wherever I could. And they always had that. And then I think you had people that was always developing something. And so you had prayer circles. You had the regular prayer circles that happen with the organized religions, but you also had informal spiritual practices that were going on all of the time. And anyway, even outside of the Jumu'ah service, even outside of Sunday service, people who were spiritually inclined in that way formed their own communities and they did things and supported each other. But honestly, though, you know, I think the basketball court was a religion, or not a religion, but a spiritual practice for people. And I think for some, and I think so is running, running clubs with people who developed. And I understand that it gets to a point where like everything becomes a practice, but it is true. I think that when you think about it as being a way for you to sustain yourself and survive in the world, it's a lot of those practices that I would note now in retrospect because I've had my life transformed by like getting on the bike and bicycling.
Would you describe yourself as a spiritual man today? Is that part
Yeah,
of your identity?
yeah, I think so.
Tell me why. Why does that feel right to you?
Well, I mean, I chase awe and wonderment. I try to acknowledge it when I see it, and I believe in its value, and I believe that the world isn't just about me, and I'm humbled by the largeness of it all and the bounty of it all.
So, for someone who has a complicated relationship with spirituality who might be listening to you, how would you uncomplicate it for them?
I mean, the truth is that people say, "Well, you have a great life now," but when I was in that prison cell and I was 120 pounds and a kid, I still felt a sense of wonder. And I would just say, start with that. I once opened up a book and dozens of 4-leaf clovers fell out, like these dry 4-leaf clovers. And they were, and they were in a book my aunt had sent me. I'm in a cell and these clovers fall out. And I was just like awed by the beauty of the metaphor coming to life and what was represented as her time and her looking, right? Well, I think that there are other things that reflect our ability to like look and think, and I think we could just produce those things that connect to that.
Can you share a couple of things that met your sense of wonder in prison? It's not a
Oh man, I
word.
had this
It's
homeboy. Yeah, I had this homeboy who he could take two Walkman and produce a third one, and the third one will be able to record things. And the microphone, and it have a hidden compartment that when you flip the switch, all of a sudden the play button became a record button, and the microphone was the speakers. The headphones became the microphone. I thought that was just amazing. And let me see, that's one thing. I had a couple more things. All right, one is I saw this dude, man. He had a book in Spanish. I was like, what's that? He showed me the book. I was like, that's in Spanish. I was like, oh, where you from? And he's like, Norfolk. I said, oh, well, I mean, where your people from? He's like, Virginia, Norfolk. I was like, you know what I'm asking, man? How you speak Spanish? He's like, I taught myself. He had taught himself Spanish. He was amazing. And that's just two things of many, really.
Tell me about your love affair with books.
Oh man, let's probably go back to like second grade. Going to the library, having to pick a book out, and I found this book about an encyclopedia of like sports heroes, and learned about George Mikan and all these other folks. And I got it on my bed and like just and then Walter Mosley. And right now I'm still reading Walter Mosley. I got this new book on my bed.
Tell me, when you when the network of books started happening when you were in jail, what did it represent for you? It was more than a book. So what did it represent?
Yeah, man, a kind of freedom, a kind of attention, a way to hold my own. A way to become immersed in 1,000 other stories besides mine, because mine felt like a little woe is me. Um, but it was also a way to think and engage with history. I mean, it was a book that really changed how I imagined what was possible with language and with words.
And I can hear how even just speaking to you for a few minutes, how precise you are with your words and how much depth is in your choice of language in many ways. Did you
Oh,
did
thank
you
you.
know did you know you were going to write a book one day? Was it always there?
Nah, no, I think yeah, I think I was just trying to get by, and I did. And as I got by, I think I was thinking a lot of the stuff I discovered on the humble, and there's things I probably would have wanted to do as a writer, but like writing for the New York Times magazine, that's just something I did because I had an idea and I thought this was a good way to bring the idea to life. Um, so some of these things I would have never imagined doing, but some of them were sort of in the wheelhouse of being a writer, publishing a book. I didn't imagine myself doing it, but it all happened so fast when I came home that I went from like never dreaming of it to imagining it to, oh, this is when my book comes out. But it's these other things that I think are even more like complicatedly like blowing me away, like Freedom Reads. This is something that wasn't in a bingo card at all.
Tell us when that showed up for you.
2020. Yeah, I had somebody ask me what I would do if like money wasn't an issue for people in prison. I was like, well, we put millions of people inside. I put millions of books inside. And then I started iterating on the idea and it became a project at Yale and then an independent organization.
On your release date, right, March 4th, what did you take me back to that time? What did it feel like? What were you saying to yourself? And what was, I guess, your biggest piece of wisdom that you had that day that you didn't have when you went in?
I wanted to go to college. And so I was just thinking, all right, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna go to college. But also like I hadn't done any of those things for a long time that like help you become.
What life wisdom, what life experience, what life lesson did you have when you came out so clearly in your mind that you didn't have when you came in?
Nah, honestly, I was 24, so I don't know if I had a life lesson. I was still amazingly young. I just had no clue about anything. And I think about it now. I mean, a part of it that's worse is that I had to begin functioning immediately. So I had to sort of perform adulthood while I tried to learn it. And I mean, I did okay, but that's how I ended up, married with a kid in like 2 years. Um, and I never got a chance to be a student, so I went to law school. But part of even going to law school was making things work based on the situation I was in. And so it's just like I didn't get that moment of wisdom. I so more so got in the maelstrom of life, and I figured out how to swim.
So what do you have now? What's the piece of wisdom where you're like, life taught me this?
I don't know. I mean, it's what it. I mean, it's interesting because it's this profound question. It's like, what have you learned after all this time? And also, like, I came out of prison still a kid, and that's one of the things I realized. I went in a kid, but for a long time, I thought 24 was some kind of adult. But I'm 45 now, and I recognize that 24 is still a kid, particularly if you have none of those life experiences, and I had none of them at all. And I think the piece of advice I have now is, I mean, it's two ways to stay young, and I think you should do them both. The first way is to remember that you're always learning, and that there's real joy and a humility that comes from recognizing that, like, it's better to be a student than to imagine that you're a pro at everything. And even the things that we master, we still students because mastery requires constant refreshers. But the other thing is that I wish I would have had a better sense of the fact that everything takes time. And I was compelled to rush for all kinds of reasons. And then it all worked out, but I wish I would have known that time is a beautiful thing to have to savor, particularly around important life decisions and important life changes.
Do you feel today that you have slowed down, or what's helped you slow down?
No, I've probably about all people admission would say I've sped up. So, but it makes you slow down a little bit though, right? Because it's this weird way in which, when you go like if you watch a movie and people get into like Mach speed, they have to slow down to make you see them, or else they'll disappear. So that's what I'm doing. I'm in Mach speed, but it's a kind of way that I've also slowed down so you can see me moving, which is a new way to live.
So take me back to where you weren't too fast.
Well, it was just not noticing it though. It was not taking the time to like visit another country. It was not taking the time to cook. I cook for my sons all the time, but it's also, and I've always cooked. But like now I look at recipes and I try new things, and it's a part of a series of experiences that I'm creating for us and for them. I smile more. I take pictures. I take pictures of the same streets that I walk every day, cementing the way that I'm a part of this place. I think that that's a way in which I am slowing down in ways that I hadn't before because I just thought that there was a need to go from A to B, not just with as much quickness as possible, but recognizing that sometimes quickness is literally taking your time. Because one of the things I've always wanted was to build relationships and community. Is like a million brief touches is not going to have the power of one substantial one. And I need to pay attention to that one substantial.
So you have two sons, right? Miles and Micah? Mika?
Makai, yeah.
Micah. So if I spoke to them, what would they tell me is most important to their dad?
They probably say school, education.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Books. Yeah.
And what would you tell them about how to live their life as men in this world?
I think it's a lot of things that I've been telling them all along, but I do think that I would tell them it's important to have a code and to recognize that the moments in our life that matter most is when our beliefs are challenged and we have to stand up for them and we have to hold to them because sometimes convenience suggests doing the worst possible thing or the thing that's just slightly easier, but being a good human requires you to do the right thing.
Can you share some of the Betts family codes?
Oh, yeah. I mean, some of them it's interesting because you got to develop them, right? And I think some of them I'm developing now, right? But I think be more help in the lives of people you care about than hurt. Uh, you say the right thing. You tell the truth, even if it's challenging. You understand and respect that your mental health is important, and so is the mental health of others. And that means talking to somebody, their family comes in all kinds of like different shapes and configurations. And that's because me and their parents, me and their mom is divorced. Doesn't mean that we ain't still a family. But it's interesting too because part of this exercise is saying, man, how do you remember the things that you want your children to know, and how many times have you said it in a way in which it's a thing, not like vibes, right? Because like, and I think you notice I didn't say thou shalt not kill. I mean, I think that's important, you know what I mean? But like, I'm not I'm not gonna say it though because it's not one of the things that they need to hear me say, or like thou shalt not steal, right? But I do think it's some affirmative things that I want us to remember that we believe in because these are the things that are substantive. Some of them is like, yo, kid, you might want to do this thing. I don't think you should do it because it makes me feel like you would be in danger. And as a parent, I can't put you in a situation that feels like danger. And yes, you have to grow up and you have to do these things, but this one is not the one. And even that in itself becomes not a struggle, but a thing in which it's me trying to, give them some values.
Is some form of relationship to the divine source, love, consciousness, is that in the house? Is that something they are exposed to? Is that something they've heard from
Yeah,
you?
yeah, they go to church with their mom, you know what I mean? And we've been consistent and being inconsistent in going to church. So, you know what I mean? And I think that so the way in which I articulate it or we've been doing it now is probably something that I'm in the process of doing more, you know what I mean? But because sometimes you just want to have a language for it, you know what I mean? And I've talked to them about different things I've done, but yeah, you gotta have a language for it.
What is your word?
Yeah,
Is it
Yeah.
life? Is it the universe? Is it
I
God?
mean, I
Is
use
it,
things
what's your
interchangeably
word?
though. All of them actually. I say God a lot, and in my book Dog Rule, I say God a lot. I usually say G dash D. I actually never really write it out. I say gods sometimes, but I've written guzzles as a poetic art form in which the whole practice is like to talk to the spiritual, and you say, "Dear beloved, dear matchmaker, dear soothsayer," and so you articulate the names for God. I mean, even in the Islamic tradition, you had the 99 names for Allah. So I think when I believe that I am multitudes, which does not mean that I am God, but to have multitudes within us means that we have different ways in which we relate to the idea in different points and states of our lives, especially when the active literature gives us a way to recognize that sometimes we relate by holding on to the beliefs of another person, and it might only be for hours. So, I've been in rooms where they were doing Hindu spiritual practices, and in that moment, I've been connected to it. And so, I think that I am really trying to say that in containing multitudes, I've tapped into it in different ways. But I do concede your point, um, Ariane, that like I have to talk to my sons about this, though. It can't just be vibes. It can't just be me trying to be a person that lives in the world this way. It has to be me. I'm trying to communicate to my sons what these practices are that I've accumulated like rings. Because, for me, that accumulation has been, me trying to be the spiritual cat I am. You know what I mean? But I even fucking study yoga, yo. Siddhartha yoga. And it was like, you ain't gotta, it was like, yo, it was perfect for me. It was like, you don't have to do yoga because I ain't really gonna do yoga in prison, right? It's like, you ain't have to do yoga. You just read. And then in reading, it is doing the yoga. And I was like, what? Man, this is for me. And I would get the things every month. So I've done a lot of it.
Mm. Did you call yourself a spiritual cat? I like that. I don't
Yeah.
know if I've,
Yeah.
that's hilarious. Um, do do you feel like there's a sort of big question that you have right now going on for God? Like, do you have some sort of, yeah, like
It's
what?
interesting because I don't know, man. I feel like in my life, I feel like I have something to do, and that thing is not necessarily questioning. That thing is to do the thing, and it spend a lot of time. I spent a lot of time not knowing what that was, and now I know, and so in that I'm spending a lot of time doing and dealing with my own personal struggles and the regular needs of life that get in the way of that doing, dealing with my own mental health, and dealing with my own need for joy. So I don't think I have questions these days, and it feels good not to be questioned. I am doing, and I have some joy in the doing.
Dwayne, with Freedom Reads, for example, did you feel a sense of guidance? Did you feel that this had your name on it? Did you feel like
I mean,
you
yeah,
were
my
meant
book
to
is
do
called
it?
my book is called Off the Cuff. My new book is called Off the Cuff, and in some ways, it's about how I responded to the world and how I feel like I've been like gifted these radical, beautiful, deeply meaningful opportunities, right? I mean, somebody says, what would you do if money wasn't an issue for people in prison? And that becomes Freedom Reads. And I got all the other moments in my life that feel like pure whimsy, but it's clearly the hand of God, on my life. Like from deciding to go to law school because somebody had said that they went to law school because they knew they wasn't finished learning. So, oh, I'm not finished learning either. Maybe law school is where I should be. To, so many other moments in my life that matter and that have helped shape me. So yeah.
Talk to me about the hand of God.
Yeah, just I mean, I was having a conversation with somebody, and they were explaining to us that I'm struggling, and we in the Harvard Law School's cafeteria, and we're there because I like to write with a lot of noise around me. And so somebody calls my friend's name, and he sees her and is like, "Well, what are you doing here? Didn't you get your MFA from the IO Writers Workshop?" She's like, "Yeah, yeah," but I figured I wasn't finished with school, and I was get a PhD in English or go to law school, and I decided to go to law school. I had never thought about going to law school before. I hear that conversation and I'm like, I'm going to law school and I'm going to Harvard because I'm standing in Harvard's law school. I ended up going to Yale, but I got into Harvard. But to me, that's like a hand of God kind of moment. I wasn't supposed to be there. I've gotten 5 people out of prison And once you've done something like that, you recognize how fickle it is, and it happened. So
Do you call that? I know some people will be like, wow, is that the same thing as synchronicity? Is it
I
being
do
in
love
the
it, and I love that
place?
word. Yep. And I actually love that word synchronicity though, because it's like everything everywhere all at once. And, you know, and that's how it is.
It's how you and I met. You and I were not meant to meet.
I wouldn't that was not my meeting.
It
That
was not my meeting either. And then we were
Yeah.
all in this meeting together.
Because what happened was like I had a meeting, but the person we were meeting with had like kind of was pressed for time and had to meet with all of us. And we joined our meetings because we were like, wait, why not? I was like, yeah.
Why
So
not?
yeah, it is why we how we met.
Yeah. When you double book meetings, there's always a gift in it, though.
It is always a gift. We got to tell her about this, Hannah. We got to tell her about this.
We will. Dwayne, there's a couple of other terms that I just, I would say are kind of in the classical spiritual language because I can hear that you're a language person. Tell me, tell me just your first response when I say this. Do you believe in karma?
I do. My belief is complex, just because you never know where you start out. So it's more warning than destiny. It's remember that like you get to sow seeds in the world, and you always have a choice about whether what you say like adds to someone's suffering or eases their suffering.
What about past lives? Do you believe in past lives? Do you believe you're coming back? Do you believe you've been here before?
That's interesting. I mean, it's fascinating. I did. Sometimes I had a moment of deja vu. It's like I can't believe that this happened. Um, I think that I would love to be compelled by humility, and sometimes I fear the solace that I would get from knowing I was returning or that I was here before. But my imagination runs wild, and it's one of these things that I like to think about, like to read books where the characters have lived forever or have just lived a past life. Is one of my favorite fantasy novels. This dude discovers all of the lives he lived. You hear me in his early 20s. I mean, this is kind of beautiful thing about that accumulation of knowledge and history. And maybe again, I have also accumulated names and identity. So I think I take Whitman's confession that I am multitudes in the most figurative, literative, and imaginative way possible.
Do you believe in life after death?
I believe that if it's so, um, I would have more solace in my heart.
Do you believe in soulmates?
I do. But when you think of a woman and a smile comes to your lips, you got to say yes to that question.
Yeah. But but tell me more. So what is a soulmate? Is a soulmate, yeah, I'm not gonna put words in your mouth of all
It's
people.
one of these things, though. It's like when you've experienced it, you begin to know it. Sort of like somebody who makes you realize that we all kind of Tetris figures on a board, hoping to match up in just the right way. And it's that rare time when like all of the divots and the crooks and the crookeds match and fit in a way that's just perfect and also accidental. And so for me, a thing is like laughter, and the thing is how we deal with sorrow, how we deal with pain, like what we confess to each other. But also, I was falling in love, and I was writing these love poems, and I was thinking about how I realized that a love poem is confessing to something like, and now twice, your lips on my tears, which is a completely different way of telling somebody that they mean something. And so, um, we all live and exist in the world in different ways, but I do think that soulmate thing inspires a thing in you that didn't exist before, kind of articulateness that didn't exist before, a little bit of a je ne sais quoi, right? And and then if you have a story that thing is wrapped around in, and then the story gives it energy. Because this is a woman that I first kissed when I was a teenager, and so it also has this sense of foreverness, or the closest you could get to foreverness when you have something that distanced and reconnected and circled. I mean, it's evidence of being able to live multiple lives in one lifetime, and I know that. I mean, in some ways, I profoundly, my life is profound evidence of the ability to live multiple lives in one lifetime.
I think I read somewhere that you told your wife at the time when you were on your second date with her that you had been to jail. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
correct?
yeah.
And I
That's
guess
probably why I wasn't married no more. No, I'm joking.
the thing that touched me was just the power of the vulnerability and to sort of move, we all have things that we don't want to tell people that's kind of in our, secret hiding space. That's not at all what you did though. You were just like, here's
But see,
everything that's in that place.
but it's really interesting because that's what my girlfriend said to me yesterday or recently about the power of my vulnerability, and that's the thing that everybody doesn't recognize, and I think I've been fortunate to have a lot of the world recognize the power of that. But that's also one of the soulmate things, though, right? Because it's degrees to the recognition, and to understanding what it means. And even an understanding that like sometimes I am trying to figure out what it means, and I'm struggling with it because of it's not just easy going because of that.
So for people who are listening where this term vulnerability, it kind of irks them. Men have been told to be vulnerable and women are asking for more vulnerability. What is what is sort of the simplest way to reach for that, even though the word might not land for people? What is it?
I mean, it's moments that you just don't have the answer, and to find a way to still talk during those moments. Like far too often, we lean into silence, and then we believe doing is something that should not be done, right? So I think vulnerability is being willing to talk when you don't have an answer, even if that's just to say I don't have an answer.
Do you feel vulnerability is a synonym for just radical honesty?
Maybe, maybe not though, because I mean, it's a part of it, and it is one of those things. But I also think for me, like vulnerability is like that first step to like getting it going. Because when I admit that I don't know something down and I'm willing to say it, that means I'm willing to fix it in terms of get the knowledge, put people in position to have the knowledge. So like radical honesty doesn't actually come with a set of like tasks to get the outcome. Radical honesty is one of the things that's within the process that's helping you get to what the next thing is, right? But yeah, vulnerability I think is almost like it's a verb.
You mentioned mental health. Why do you think we are so struggling with mental health right now on the planet? What's different? What's changed? What's missing?
Maybe it's a increased expectation for justice. I think it's also the ways in which the internet has made us connected in ways we never were before. And it's a strange way in which being connected to each other more has been more chaotic. And but then also I think that we are learning how to care for each other in a new world. Our brains have been shaped in a way that like no generation before us has had our brains shaped, and our diets have been shaped. And so in a way that prison is hitting us. I think it's a lot of things that are different that we're figuring out, which is okay. I think it just means we get to be human just like those before us. And we can act like our concerns are new or hit us differently. But even if our concerns are new, the impact that imagined concerns other generations had hit them with the same force. Like the thing that matters is not necessarily how huge the problem is, but how much that the force of and the weight of that problem on your human body. I don't think that's shifted.
What's your biggest source of joy these days?
Love, all of it. You know what I mean? Like for real. I got abundance of love, and I think it brings me great joy.
How have you learned to love yourself?
Slowly and carefully, and like by understanding there's a difference between empathy and responsibility, you know. And that she had a professor used to tell me all the time, make sure you put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And now I take that seriously because it forces me to know first that I deserve to be saved and I deserve to be healthy and whole. You know. And taking care of other people is not an assertion that that thing is true. That's an assertion that they deserve to be healthy and whole, which may very well be true. But if they deserve to be that, then that means that you deserve to live because you are a conduit to that thing for them. You know, you can't, like, if you can't swim, you can't be jumping into the river to save people. I got you. I got you. Can you swim, sir? No, don't jump in. Don't. But I need to rescue you, but you can't swim, sir. Won't you get somebody who can swim? Yeah. Oh man. That's a
Dwayne,
good one.
take me inside your routines for joy, for taking care of yourself, for your own mental health. Like, what's non-negotiable? What's like, I always do this or I never do that.
I mean, I was up this morning at 3 and I got dressed and checked the tires of my bicycle to see if they had air. And bike 14 miles. Thought
At
about a lot, listened to
at
music.
3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, when I got back, got my camera, got got dressed, got my camera, walked outside and walked a couple miles and took pictures of people in the street. Took a call while I was taking pictures. Couple calls actually. Freedom Reads work. And, I saw the problem. Instead of haggling about it, I made a decision after consulting with a mentor, you know. But it's interesting. This is just my life, and it all bring me joy, But it all started with like getting on that bike, and that all became the fuel for me to like really like focus, and hone in on what was necessary.
So you're not one of these people that is like, my morning routine is this, my evening routine is this. It feels more like you're just in the flow of listening to what's coming
Yeah,
through you. Is that right?
yeah, and I mean I've been up since 1 o'clock though, and so my up and down, my sleeping patterns are just I'm gonna go to sleep tonight at 8, and then I'm gonna get up, and so also because of that, my rhythms are kind of different, and it's not necessarily a thing that I do. I do that in the morning. It might be me cleaning up the whole morning, and there's a weird freedom in doing whatever I need to do at 3 o'clock, well, like at 5 o'clock, depending on when I go out to bike. But using those hours like that, like a bike 3 o'clock to 4:30, 3 o'clock to 5, then 6 to 6:30 means something completely different to me. You know what I mean? And I might like send three emails out and schedule them to go out. So the rhythm changes, but my ability to do that work doesn't. And again, some days I take a bike for 30 minutes instead of an hour and a half, which gives me even more time. But I like it.
So what would you say is the best thing for your mental health and the thing that triggers your mental health in a bad way?
The best thing is cycling. The thing that triggers in a bad way is feeling like I'm being taken advantage of.
Talk to me a bit about the movie, just because it's coming out and premiering in the next couple of weeks.
I mean, it's interesting because March 4th is the day I came home. It's also the birthday of the director producer, Robe Embriano, one of them. Valerie Hung is the other one. But it's also like me trusting them to tell their story. And I learned how dope and interesting and like sophisticated and visionary a team you have to build to do something like this. That it was me and it was the two of them, but then there was people in the camera and it was just the crew and it was the way in which they designed how the film was going to be shot, but also how the story was going to be told. And it's Brian Henry Tyree that's like narrating the film, and it's all my words. So it's my poetry and my prose. I do the poetry, he's reading the prose, and it's these interviews. But it's a beautiful way to tell a story. And for me, it was something to see what it meant for me to be vulnerable, because I was vulnerable and I gave my story to these other creative people, and they built this thing that I think is lovely and engaging and exciting, and it premieres in Tribeca. I mean, it's something there people just say like the gravity that your mom has in it is beautiful and amazing. And so I like how it tells an interesting story that is my life, but it's also Freedom Reads, and it's also a story about incarceration in America, and it's also a piece about fatherhood.
Tell me about your relationship to your mom. How did
Yeah, my mom is
how
my
did
heart.
it sounds like she was everything and
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, she's my heart, and it's one of these situations where she taught me that you could forgive yourself and that you could grow into being the person that you are. And she's always been my strongest supporter, but she's also been a person that has reflected to me what it means to be strong. which is what it means to keep going, essentially. And she's always shown me how important that is.
Would that be her definition of being strong? Because it's a beautiful
To keep
definition,
going.
especially for a
Yeah.
man.
To keep going. Yeah.
I want to talk about this word that I hear in your poetry, but also in the interview, which is beauty. It feels to me like, Dwayne, you find beauty in everything. It sounds like you found beauty in jail. You found beauty in really hard times, and even just the decision that you were being sent to jail. You found beauty in books. You find beauty in everything. Like, why? Seems like it comes easily to you. So teach me, help me.
Yeah, but no, I think it has to be an active practice, though. I look for 4-leaf clovers all the time. I mean, I found a couple yesterday. It's just a practice. The camera for me is looking for beauty and looking at beauty. And so, I think I do it all the time, but I think it's a active practice that we all have to engage in and remind ourselves that it is a real value. We have so much to do. Looking for beauty allows us to slow down, and slowing down for 10 seconds within a minute, you might still get to the same place in the same amount of time, but for those 10 seconds, something happened. And that's what I mean about being able to move fast and move slow, you know.
I know this might seem like a strange question, but for people who have never been and have never seen, what jail is like from the inside, what is beautiful about jail?
The people who are there, the way in which they create ideas that soften the harshness of their lives, the ambitions and the hopes. The same thing that's beautiful about all our lives, really. A lot of us are living in places that are as desperate and ruinous as a jail. And in the same way that those folks have beauty, it's the same. It's just sometimes the landscape upon which their beauty rests is one that we might not ever be forgiven for allowing to exist.
What was the thing when you were there that you missed the most, other than your mother, for sure?
I think I went in at 16. So to be honest, I was a child. I knew that I was having nascent desires, about what the world should look like and what my role was in it. But I didn't have anything to miss. I hadn't driven, what I mean? I hadn't had a job. I hadn't graduated from high school. I hadn't had a serious girlfriend. I didn't know what I was missing. I knew it conceptually, but I didn't know what it actually means.
Are you in touch with the people you were incarcerated with?
Just one guy, my co-defendant Marcus, but not anybody else. He was and that's one of my best friends.
What do you feel people get wrong about people who've been to jail?
Oh, they're saying people who've been in jail is a descriptive phrase that really matters. And it's like acting as if it matters if you say people who wear bracelets around their wrists. I mean, and it says something, but see, there you go. There you go.
Yeah. Talking about bracelets, I need to ask you about your rings. Tell me about the
Oh yeah.
rings, Dane. I mean, I'm paying attention here.
Yeah, it's just, I got kind of obsessed with different manifestations of my own character that I wasn't thinking about before. And wearing rings was one of them. And I went from, I went to wearing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in a day sometimes. This is 5. This is 11. I have 11 on. So I have rings on 9 fingers, and 2 of them I have 2 rings on a piece. But yeah, and they all capture moments though. These snapshots and the things that happened to me. Stores I just walked into.
So pick one and tell me the story and the symbolism behind it.
This one I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I just walked into a spot, and it's a jade, piece of jade from the longest river in Guatemala. I think about it, and I was, with my folks and me and my girl, we were looking at the Black Wall Street, and I was performing there, and we were walking the streets like every day, and I just walked past the shop and grabbed this, but this was a Guatemalan, and I was thinking about the history of that country. And so the piece ends up representing these different phases of migration that we're always in, and the ways in which our home is often built on homes of others that we destroyed or that we displaced. And so it holds all of that too.
I share something similar. I feel the same way about all these bracelets. There's just a story and they talk to me. I think
Yeah,
symbolism is important.
me too.
Couple of last questions, Dwayne. When you look at the world, when you look at the state of the world, and it sounds like you see a lot of beauty in the world as well. So this is not a negatively led question. What do you see that is missing? What do you see that it's like, if you could just pour something into the world right now? Not
Yep,
as a
I do think
poet,
that.
not as a
Yeah,
poet, not as a lawyer, but just really
yeah.
as, your most deepest
I
self.
think people should just weep a little bit more. I think people should just notice the suffering. You don't have to have an answer. Just notice it in a way that's not a little bit less callous. I'd love to see more public affirmations of the relief that we provide to people who suffer, and public affirmations of the sorrow that we feel in the face of all of it that we can't touch.
Is there something that you believe really deep down that you haven't really shared before? Is there something where you're like, you know what, like
That
this?
tomorrow will be better. That tomorrow will be better. And I know it's not the hugest, most profound thing to believe, but I spend a lot of my life being in situations that it seemed to be the most rational thing to expect failure. And people predicted failure of my life, and I accepted it sometimes. And it's a line from John Edgar Wyman: "Don't fall asleep in your enemy's dream." And it's true. And I think that starts with not believing that tomorrow will be better. And I've not said that because I've had a lot of bad days, and it seems like a big bet. But I would start with it though. Tomorrow will be better. First time said ever.
I'm gonna stop us there because I like the closing. Tomorrow will be better, especially coming from you,
Thank you so
and
much.
and it's something we all need to hear.
Yeah.
Dwayne, I want to ask, how do people find you, support Freedom Reads? What do you need from listeners, viewers?
Yeah. I mean,
Please ask.
our work is done based on the financial support, the donations that we receive. And, we get donations by you giving directly at Freedom Reads, spell it out, FreedomReads.org. You can donate directly, but also you learning about our work and you telling people about our work, because enthusiasm needs other people to support. So don't just support yourself. Ask 2 or 3 other people to support, and ask them to ask others. And that will ensure that we could provide a freedom library, one for every person in every cell block in this country. That's making it accessible, beautiful, life-changing literature soon as they wake up and walk out of their bunks.
How many jails are there in the US? Like, what's the goal? You've got 500.
So
What are we going for?
our goal is 20,000 freedom libraries. We have about 700 at this point, and that's because there are like 6,000 or so jails and prisons and juvenile detention centers in the entire country. That doesn't touch jails or federal prisons. So our goal is 20,000.
We're going to help you get there.
I appreciate it.
Dwayne, thank you. Bless you. I send you all my love. I'm so glad that synchronicity and the hand of God brought us together. Really.
Thank you so much.
If this conversation moved you or inspired you, please follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts. And if it really moved you, please leave us a 5-star review. It really does make a big difference. And finally, if someone came to mind while you were listening to this episode, please send it their way. Remember, new episodes drop weekly. I'll see you very soon.